Welcome to Pointed in the Right Direction book YouTube channel. And today we have a prophet we're interviewing. I call him Moses a lot of the time because, the picture I see every time I look at him is the Ten Commandments. He looks like it. And he's about as old as Moses, I would say. But also, and this is the reason why he's on. I want to bet, and you can correct me here, Tom, that you probably have been wearing prosthetics longer than anyone else alive at the moment.
Pretty close. My first pair of prosthetic legs were bilateral below the knee prostheses, and that surgery was done as soon as school got out in 1956. And I had those prostheses probably within 60 days. So during the summertime in between grades, 1956.
So, literally, you're coming up on 60 years.
Beyond 60 years.
66? It's
No,
26?
56.
56. Okay, you're coming up on
50.
70 years.
Yes. I've been a bilateral above knee amputee. That was bilateral BK. I've been a bilateral above knee amputee for 64 years this August 5th.
Okay.
So I've been
Okay.
BK for 5 years prior to that.
Okay. So, with that being said, your first ones were whittled out wood peg legs.
Literally. It's a funny story, but I went in, finally got cleared by the doc, swelling was down and all that jazz. So I'm put into a long room. It was a parallel bars and a mirror at the other end of it, but it was just a convenient room to measure me and do some stuff, whatnot. And I've always been, even as a youngster, enthralled with the idea of making stuff. I was gluing popsicle sticks together to make stuff back in those days, but I appreciated wood. And there was a couple of hunks of wood sitting in the corner that I thought were going to be made into a lamp base or something. And I complimented on it. I said, I bet you the grain on that's going to really pop when you get it done. And the guy said, well, I hope you like it. That's your legs. Ohio Willow Wood Company was actually producing Ohio Willow Wood plugs for prosthetics.
Okay. So, any number or any idea on how many different leg designs you've gone through?
Oh my gosh. That's really a funny question to ask, because my reflection on that topic from time to time takes me to a funny spot, because those early BK sockets had a leather lace up that came up on the thigh. They hadn't yet figured out how to capture the condyles and so forth and make a BK that was purely BK. They weren't doing that yet. The BK socket was supported from the thigh. And so that was leather lace up, 2 layers of leather with something, I don't remember what the material was in between to stiffen it some, but there were outside hinges, on both the medial and the lateral side of the prosthesis. And that was the way that system works. So I find it amusing, because we've gone through all kinds of machinations and improved things, quote unquote, in lots of ways. And now we've come back to people wanting adjustable socket technology in lower limbs. And so we have a leather lace up now. Yeah, kind of weird to have that come full circle.
It, yeah, because I've seen those and, joking about the Moses. everything. Um, the fact that I'm just coming up on 10 years in my amputation journey, I I thought of uh, those were back World War I type stuff.
The thing about Hanger, and I can't think of what his first name was, but the guy that got injured in the Civil War, leg blown off, and so he made himself
Yeah.
some kind of a crutch and eventually made a prosthesis. And then some of his buddies who were also getting blown up in the next box all over wanted to be able to stay in there and fight, so he made them something, and that's how Hanger Clinic came to be. I mean, we are talking about old school. That was the first of prosthetics in the USA.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're the big player now.
Oh, big, yeah,
I
big
mean,
time.
they own Point Designs
Yeah.
and bought over the last several years several
Oh,
companies
yeah.
besides just, when I first became an amputee, the way I described prosthetics and stuff was like a car, buying a car. You went to the dealer to buy the car. You didn't go to GM or Ford or Chrysler to buy
Oh,
your car. You went to
yeah.
the dealers. And that, for the most part, is the way, except for there are a couple of the dealers that are also manufacturers, so to speak.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, so you've seen a lot of changes
I have.
in the legs themselves, but also the way they are mounted or attached and
suspended.
suspended. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, you know, I guess for probably 30 years, I was in what's referred to as a total contact suction socket, where literally the inside of that prosthesis socket was made as closely as possible to the every nook and cranny and shape of my residual limbs. And I literally pulled a piece of cotton stockinette up onto my limbs, fed it down through a valve hole that the valve had been screwed out of, a little baby powder on that sock so it would slide, and I would sit in a chair. Being bilateral, I couldn't do the way they wanted me to do, and that stand up on my sound side leg and put this leg on. Well, okay, that's all good. But I would, with my hand, pull the prosthesis closer and further up my thigh while pumping that back and forth, giving me an inch at a time with each pump as I pulled the cotton sock out. And when it came out, the valve went in place. I pushed the button and pulled hard on it and bottomed out in that socket and let the valve go. And that one was staying on. I put the other one on. I stood up, pulled my blue jeans up, which usually stayed on my legs overnight, leaning against the wall, and, and did my belt and put a shirt on, and off I went. And that was it. It stayed on because it couldn't come off. Suction was created in mounting it that way. The problem with that was, I worked in the body shop business when I first was still going to school and right out of school. And in Salt Lake City, the summertime can get a little warm and there's no air conditioned body shops. So I'm sweating myself to death working on people's cars, prepping them for paint or straightening a small dent or whatever. And I'm going to stand up and my leg's falling off because the sweat has happened so much that I've lost that suction. Lovely. Not a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, that's crazy. But also, they still use that
Oh,
setup now because I have a friend that's a double arm amputee,
uh-huh.
and that is the setup that he uses for his
Well,
foot and
I've
his
I,
arm,
I-
or
I've
a similar.
I have got a friend that's a bilateral from a birth defect,
Oh,
bilateral
yeah.
knee dysartic. I'll not go into the name, but she's well known. She still to this day wears total contact suction fit sockets.
So I want to talk about fit is everything. The
Yeah,
foundation, it's like building a house. If you don't have a good foundation to start with,
yeah,
you don't have a good house.
yeah.
And I've learned in mine that, yeah, fit is everything. So, how was the fit? Were there hot spots and stuff? Was it a lot of work to create that?
It was, one, there was some fine tuning to be done, and there were times when maybe I lost a few pounds, and so they were just loose earlier in the day. My problem is while I'm totally healthy, I don't have kidney or liver problems, but my limbs are going to be as large as they're going to be in the morning, and I shrink throughout the day because I don't sit on my butt. So, depending on how the fit was, maybe I was good till 11 o'clock in the morning, and then it was kind of lousy and kind of painful. And, I didn't have, I mean, I had a family to raise. I was working. I couldn't just say at 11:30, well, I'm done for the day. And there wasn't a locker room to go into to take them off and relax for 30 minutes during my lunch time or something and put them back on. So by the end of the day, I was pistoning and rubbing up and down and just, building up calluses, let alone blistering. And my scar tissue from so many surgeries over the years would be literally crimson red. And typically I would come home from work and the kids would be all ready to eat and dinner would be ready to go. But I would flash in and go sit in a tub of Epsom salts for 20 minutes and then get out and put myself back together and come out and have the evening time because I was dying by the time I got to 5:30, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. It was literally, I used to marvel at how I could maintain a pleasant personality and do, be a dad and interact with people after work, because work wasn't everything. Um, and then I found out later on that maybe I was mostly not such a nice guy as I thought I was being, but that those that loved me and were close to me would kind of cut me some slack. And I hated to discover that later on, but that was a truth that came to me, down the road.
Yeah, and that's it because well, no matter what it is, anytime you have a challenge within your body, it takes more effort. And depending upon the challenge stuff, maybe more mental bandwidth and all of that
Yeah.
to do the same as an individual that doesn't have a challenge of any sort.
I can quantify that for you in a way that I think people will probably understand. That hadn't come to me until I had the opportunity uh, to go participate in the Paralympic Games in Seoul, South Korea in 1988. Um, because I always thought Paralympics, and I'm thinking paraplegic Paralympics, and I never realized that Paralympics is beyond Olympics. This is not only a sport and a competitive environment, but it is competitive the same way that volleyball or basketball or running is for able-bodied people. And then in addition to that, you have the additional challenge of overcoming the use of the prosthesis, the pain involved, whatever impact you're having to deal with. So beyond Olympic, and in this context that you're talking about, to walk 1 mile for you or me, we can both go walk a mile side by side at the same pace. I'm going to burn 300% the calories you do to walk that same mile.
Yes. And um, I've been so blessed in the sense of connections and opportunities and everything, of which one of the new things that is coming out, which everyone, if you're in the amputee world on the lower end, they talk gait.
Yeah.
And, horse, if you're a horse racer and stuff, everything is about gait.
Yeah.
Well, now they're realizing that your gait is affected even on the upper limb side
Yes.
of things,
Yes.
because gait somewhat comes with your arm swing.
Yeah. It's the isometrics of it.
Yes. And, within my world, everyone looks at mine as, oh, it's small. It's only a few fingers. And size does not matter
Yeah.
in anything, even though I say maybe it's the primal instinct that we we look at size as everything, bigger, faster, better,
Yeah.
and make assumptions as to that, of which a few weeks ago I was speaking at a hand surgeon conference, and part of my discussion was around just the mental challenges of finger partial hand amputees, because everyone goes, well, you still have two fingers. Yeah, that's true. The mental challenge is I'm trying to do everything like I did it before, versus if it's a wrist and above amputation, they have a prosthesis that's designed.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to incorporate natural and artificial things to come together.
Yeah. Yeah.
The best way I've found to describe things, because we are a reactive society
Oh, yeah.
and we don't realize everything. But you go swimming, and as you're swimming, you take a stroke and you're pulling, you feel the resistance in the palm of your hand. You
Mhm.
feel the water wrapping around between your fingers and everything. You
Mhm.
don't sit there and think about it, but
No.
subconsciously you feel it.
Yeah.
Well, I go swimming and I do that with my left stroke. Everything's natural. Then I take and stroke with the right side, and whether I'm wearing a prosthesis or not, it doesn't matter because there's no touch sensation there. And all of a sudden in my head, it's like something's wrong here. It's not the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
And sits there going back and forth. So with every stroke,
Yeah.
it's natural, weird, natural, weird. And, that's with probably all things. Um,
Yeah.
be just a single leg amputee
Mhm.
trying to walk, it's probably okay, kind of natural step. And then you got the weirdness of you have to adapt because things don't move exactly the same.
Yeah. Big time.
And
In the lower extremity above knee amputation world, the socket is created to be the interface between the actual walking hardware and the human flesh. All right. So that socket is your
yeah,
magic. Well, the problem is you've got a knee on the sound side of your body, wherein the tibia and fibula, as you bend your leg, they go behind the femur. If you squat all the way down, your your tib fib are literally behind your femur and thus your heel is where you can rest your butt on it on your haunches. With a prosthesis, that knee is bolted onto the end of the socket. With any luck at all, they didn't do a knee disartic on a single leg amputee so that there's room to put that mechanical knee, but that knee is still just a pivot point. It's an axle.
Yeah.
Whereas with the normal leg, that bend becomes this, and very active walking becomes slinging that hinge, that single pivot point out there in front of you. You know, it's an interesting thing. They microprocessed them. They've got the pistons are hydraulic and pneumatic that are helping to control how that swing is. And that made a big difference over the static or purely hydraulic knee. But you're still slinging the calf muscle, so the bottom half of this leg out there as though you were, casting with a fishing rod or whatever. It's not the same thing. Interestingly enough, my most recent pair of knees are 4-bar microprocessor controlled. And all of a sudden, my walking went from slinging the whole thing out there, all of that weight, to just lifting my thigh, and the 4-bar action of that bending of the knee automatically brought the heel rise up, and then the swing through wasn't going to be a stumble. It's hard to picture what the dynamics of that is, except that it cut back on the amount of energy it takes me to walk that mile by just having a 4-bar assembly instead of a plain hip pivot hinge. It took the strain off of my hips and my back because I'm not slinging that out there. I'm just lifting my femur. It's stunning the difference something that simple can make. And how many years did it take them to come up with that? You
Oh,
know,
yeah. It's amazing the technology that's out there.
but
And
it's also amazing how many people say, yeah, but we've always done it this way. This is the way we're going to keep doing it.
yes, yes, it is. So, how many different socket designs, ha- socket design and material have you gone through in your lifetime?
Oh my gosh. From the wooden sockets that also had the leather lace up on the top part, to become an above knee, where that was a leather lace up adjustable, the fit was adjustable. And of course, leather shoelaces, quote unquote, would stretch and break all the time. So it was a, a less than efficient process. But that's the way they were done. So you get into from wood to leather and other materials to back to wood, with nylon wrap around the outside of it, to then literally fiberglass resin, to um, double layer, when they got into the double layer stuff for leg amputees, so that you had a flexible inner liner that quote unquote made it more comfortable. Uh, and then you get into, you know, fiberglass and carbon fiber and, all kinds of stuff. I mean, the things that they can now print in 3D printing can make it so that a buddy of mine who is a prosthetist there in your neck of the woods,
Yeah,
he travels all over the place serving people in their homes. And I mean, all over the place,
yeah,
like Rock Springs, Wyoming, Idaho Falls,
yeah.
out of Salt Lake. At any rate, he will literally scan and take the measurements and go out to his vehicle and input the information to start the process of printing the first test socket that's 3D printed. I mean, that is a marvelous idea because I more than once it's taken me 8 to 10 weeks to get a pair of legs made between test sockets and failures and realignments and throwing stuff in the trash and starting over. Um, this kind of thing puts him into a 2 or 3 appointment delivery process knowing immediately whether that fit is good or whether we need to do a little tweaking. And taking advantage of that kind of technology, while there's those that say, oh, that's a lousy way to go, that's not near as good as casting, and oh, blah, 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 blah. Well, that has to do with the expertise of the technician. Because this guy, I was working for somebody in Phoenix. We were doing a bunch of work there, one of the manufacturing firms. And this guy called me and he said, well, look, I got a brother who lives in Phoenix area. I'll fly down there and scan you in your hotel room, and I'll feed that information and get him to overnight me the sockets, and I'll make you a pair of sockets just so you can see how this compares. And I thought, yeah, that's going to work. Guess what? Those were fantastic sockets. This guy understands the technology and utilizes it in such a way that he made all those adaptations, because the scan, like with the hand, it's not exactly perfect. You got to know where to add the additional relief, where to put the tension, where to remove the tension, so forth and so on. And he's an expert at that stuff. And, I learned a real good lesson there, because I'd been an amputee for a long, long time before he did that for me. And I'd never had anybody make sockets for me in 4 days. And that was a total turnaround time with shipping and everything. That was pretty slick.
So how did they fit and fill?
They fit so good. I used them for all of my 5K stuff. I've got a different set of knees that I use and feet. I got some elite blades
Yeah,
and yada yada yada,
yeah.
and they became my go-to uh, for those type activities. Even though my daily stuff is all adjustable socket technology.
Okay. So talk to us about the adjustable socket.
Well, I've looked at I've used two different kinds of adjustables. In 2015, I went to the Amputee Coalition conference. I think that was the year it was in Louisville, and I I walked into the vendor area, looking for free sandwiches and a beer. And, it was evening time, and all of a sudden here were four people hawking adjustable sockets. There was a guy named Jay Martin with Martin Bionics. There was somebody there representing LIM, LIM. There was Click and there was Revo. And I looked at the Click and Revo stuff and I thought, well, I talked to Jay Martin first. And so I got kind of turned on about lighter weight and a lot of air circulation. And I looked at the Click and the Revo and I said, yeah, you may have put some adjustability into those panels, but it's going to be every bit as hot. And one of my big problems living now in South Texas is summertime heat. You know, I can provide you a pint of water out of each socket if I'm in a traditional hot socket in the summertime here. Period. That's the way it works. Um, so that the two Lim and Martin were still attractive to me, but I was a skeptic. I jokingly say that, my dad's words kept coming back to me as I considered getting these, that, if it seems too good to be true, son, run like crazy because it ain't. And so I was a hard sell. I literally saw, I talked to other people, and one of the things that I thought about is I know a lot of amputees. I mean, all over the country and literally all over the world. And so I thought I'm going to do none of this because I know a bunch of my buddies are going to, and then I'm going to ask them next year at the conference, what did you like about it and what didn't you? And that's literally what I did. Got a gal that I've known for a long time that's out in Pennsylvania, and she loves the limb technology. She still loves it to this day. Well, I saw a downside to that for my particular lifestyle, the things that I do. But I was glad that it was good for her, and she enjoyed a lot of the things that I was looking for. That is a little bit lighter weight and much cooler temperature, and a nice fit all day long is kind of sweet. Okay, we're going to go with that. I waited another year before I went ahead and gave the Martin Bionics a try. And man, compared to the carbon fiber solid sockets that I'd been wearing, that was a dream come true. There were some issues. It's kind of typical, usually in this world, especially if you gain something, you're going to give something up. What you have to do is analyze it well enough to know, was the net gain a plus? Then you go with it. And if you got to give
Yeah.
a little to get a little, well, you evaluate it and see what's the best thing to do. There was a lot of plus to that for me. There were some downside. There were some uh, durability issues. Then my shrinkage is adequate enough that that adjustment, by the time I got to 3 or 4 in the afternoon, uh, though it was adjustability, it was nice. I could keep it suspended well, but it became a pinch and a squeeze that wasn't comfortable. So first thing in the day, first part of the day, it was very comfortable and very nice. And there were a lot of pluses. I could, range of motion. I could touch my toes. You can't do that in the traditional socket. It gouges you in the front of your gut. All these fun things. But, you know, by the time I got to 4 and 5 in the afternoon and still being active till 9 and 10 at night, it was pinching me in a way that I didn't like a whole lot. So that became a downside. It was still good, but it was more of a challenge than I anticipated. Uh, then, circumstances and passage of time and moving along, uh, slingshot bionics became available. I think Medicare approved them January last year. So they're a year and 4 months old. Year and 4 months old. That socket technology is next level compared to the socketless socket from the viewpoint that they actually make a fully fabric socket. Now, fabric is like seatbelt material. It's bulletproof, but it is nonetheless conforming. So for a leg amputee, when you sit down in a traditional socket, your pelvis is cocked up, you're jacked up on that side, you're wearing the back of your blue jeans out because it's a hard surface against the chair at Chili's or wherever you're sitting down, and that's the way it goes. Okay. Well, a big problem about that is literally, not to be indelicate, but bathroom usage, toilet usage, sitting on a toilet with a suction suspended socket, you're going to lose that suction. The legs are going to fall off you if you're not paying attention. Um, this socket technology is, when you sit down, it's like you don't have it on. It conforms to you. Don't care if you're sitting on a a bunch of bricks at a skateboard park watching the grandkids play or what it is. If whatever you're sitting on, you're level on both sides. In my case, it's both legs. But the point is, it's comfortable. Example of that is that it's always been difficult for me to spend more than an hour sitting. If I'm in a car or airplane or a movie theater, an hour and 10 minutes, pins and needles that got me, I'm hurting. I got to get up and walk around. So that's been life. Well, you get into this fabric socket that's suspended between aluminum struts that support you, but fabric socket. When I got them, I walked out the door. I turned on my car. I cranked up the stereo. You know me, that's me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I set the cruise control. I'm driving till I see a light come on the dash and it says, "You got 75 miles till you be pushing it, fool. Better buy some gas." And there was a billboard half a mile down the road on the freeway as I was going of a place that I like to go, and it was 30 miles away. So I'm good to go. I take that exit. I pull up to the pump. I'm undoing the cap on the side of my car when it hit me. I just drove 3.5 hours and my legs did not need me to get out of the car yet. That was way cool because, that is airplane flight. That is not having to sit on the end of the row in the movie theater so that I could stand up against the wall and not be in somebody's way. Now I'm sitting in the center of the theater enjoying that. It's little teeny things in terms of quality of life that say, yeah, I could still walk in wooden legs if that's all I had to choose from. But I got some other choices I can make now, and they really make a difference in the quality of life. What I've got right now is adjustable at fingertip, and it's either this tight or that tight. 5 rotations of the adjuster on these sockets is 1 rotation on the actual spindle. So the micro adjustability in 4 zones means I can take care of the swelling at the distal end, and not have to adjust because I don't have any swelling up close to the hip. I can adjust what part of it I need to adjust, and I'm not in contact with a hard surface. I don't have bottoming out. Uh, I don't have, you know, tissue breakdown from movement. It's phenomenal how much different it can be. And it's a really strange thing that this whole socket assembly, when they ship out of from Oklahoma City from the clinic, when they ship a kit to a prosthetist in New York City that's going to build one for his patient, the cardboard box included, that thing weighs about 3.1 pounds. If you know anything about above knee sockets, it is a lot lighter. And people, I laugh. I'll tell people, look, these are 3 pounds lighter each. And somebody said, 3 pounds? Well, what the heck? How big a deal is that? I tell them, okay, I'm doing a 5K in 2 weeks on Saturday morning. Come run that 5K with me, and we're going to put a 3 pound weight on one of your ankles. And at the end of that 5K, you can tell me whether or not 3 pounds is anything.
And that's just it. Within my world, I started with carbon fabricated frames,
Mhm.
and it felt like walking around every day carrying a bowling ball or a dumbbell or something like
Yes,
that in my
yes,
hand,
yeah.
not necessarily a lot of weight, but it's still weight.
Yep.
And what does that do? This, again, blessing and stuff. I'm working with PTs and stuff that, again, they don't look at long range stuff,
Mm-mm.
but having a different weight side to side starts affecting your vertical, your back alignment, your
What you,
shoulder, your arms,
you can
all
talk
of
to
that.
you can talk to any amputee runner, upper extremity amputee runner. They will tell you that if they don't have a balanced weight, it's an issue. To just say, well, I don't need a prosthesis to run. I can leave my arm prosthesis off and not need that. It affects their running, period.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's like paddling a canoe from one side.
A lot. Yeah.
You can do it,
Yep.
but with each stroke, you're compensating
Yep.
to keep that line straight.
Yep.
And going back, within my world, and, you know, any amputation is a big deal.
Mhm.
And especially for the individual amputee.
Yep.
With arms and legs, you have some muscle mass and
Mhm.
some volume that allows you a little bit more cushion, say, a little
Mhm.
bit.
Mhm.
Where in my world, your hand is a very bony structure that, again, an arm and a leg, a lot of times move in linear motions. Your hand moves so many different ways.
Yeah.
And design is everything that I've found. Um, Carbon fabricated doesn't allow for as much custom design as 3D printing because they can just call it a magic wand, wave, add stuff, take stuff away, and print it out.
Yep.
But also, when I was wearing the standard design partial hand prosthetic, I could only wear it for periods of time, depending upon how much usage I was doing with my hand, determined what that length of time was.
Yep.
where I would get hot spots,
Mm.
start rubbing on things, and you have to take it off. Either
Yep.
that or you're starting to chew pain pills like candy, all of that.
Yeah.
Then Point Design makes up this new frame, 3D printed, that's exposed a lot in back. It's just got the silicone interface, they call it,
Yeah.
that allows my hand to move. And that opened up the world and is so crazy. The first time I put one on, I was in Dallas at a conference and I put it on that night. And the first thing was the weight difference. And like, oh, it almost feels like it's the same weight. It's
Yeah.
real close. So
Yeah.
I'm not doing that offset, but then just the freedom and where I was only wearing my prosthesis for a period of time, and that period of time might only be 30 minutes if I was wrenching on stuff as a mechanic.
Yeah.
But then a couple of years ago, I was traveling and I wore my prosthesis for 40 hours straight. And it was so funny because the medical director for Point Design, he looks at me when I told him, he goes, "Did you take your shoes off?" I go, "Yeah." "Why didn't you take your hand off?" First off, I didn't need to. It was comfortable. But then I go to get off the plane. I didn't know I left my shoes behind. In haste of things, I'm not going to leave a hand behind.
No.
So it stays on.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hence
Well, you
the
know,
air tags. So I can
yes,
find any of my hands anywhere.
sure, sure. Well, it's the difference between what I have today and what I had even 10 years ago in terms of socket technology and the relative comfort is that, you know, I'm an early bird. I'm getting up at 6. When I get out of the shower, I'm putting my legs on and I take them off when I go to bed at night. So you basically got a 6:15 to 9:15 time frame that I'm wearing my prosthesis. When I was working for a living and then had church stuff to do with the kids in the evenings or whatever, I would wear my legs that same length of time. But I was a dead dog by the time bedtime came. Now, I just wouldn't want to go through the process of taking them off early for no good reason. I am comfortable all day long. And it's the difference of somebody thinking outside the box instead of saying, look, it's the way we've always done it. You know, it's so many little things about that. I have literally watched this practitioner in Oklahoma City take a person who came into the clinic for an above knee prosthesis, had about 2 inches of femur bone left, and the rest was tissue that wasn't going to help with suspension. And she had given up walking. Then she got excited about maybe the slingshot technology would actually give her a little edge and she could get back to some time walking, that kind of thing. Well, he said, hang on a second here, I've got an idea. He gave her a bottle of water, said, I'll be back. I'm going upstairs to the lab and I'll be back. He went and cannibalized one of the hip disartic socket assemblies and added the strap to her existing AK socket setup, wherein she had one strap that would come above the iliac and grab a hold of that. and it provided they do video of you walking in them so that they can check alignment and all this jazz. So they got a camera running. She's walking back and forth between the parallel bars. And about the third trip she makes, you observe that she's taking her hands off the bars and she's walking in case she needs to grab them, but she's taking her hands off the bars. And she turned around without touching and walked back the other direction. And the tears were flowing pretty much from everybody in the room, let alone her, because he thought outside the box. He didn't say, look, this is what you're stuck with. This is the best it'll be. At least this one's more comfortable. Smile. No, thought outside the box. When you run into somebody with your hand stuff or leg stuff, arm stuff, it doesn't make any difference. If they can get away from this is the way we've always done it and give it a go. I mean, I had a practitioner, at a clinic in San Antonio, 2013, I think, that I said, look, this ischial stuff coming up, it comes up too high in the medial portion. We don't need to talk about why. This is uncomfortable. I'd like to go subischial. Well, for a bilateral, I don't really recommend it. I said, I get that, but I really want to. He said, well, if we have to throw them in the trash and start over, so be it. Let's give it a go. And we did, and it worked. I didn't end up with rotation and spinning on them, and I got rid of some of the discomfort that comes with that kind of a socket. Well, that's a practitioner who said, well, let's give it a go. I don't understand why so many of the people in that industry feel like I ought to just accept what you've always done. I don't understand that mentality. I really don't. Especially because I've now met some people that are willing to think outside the box, and bingo, guess what happens? Better stuff happens.
Oh, yeah. That is everything. Because, again, in your life as an amputee, how many times have you been told just wear it, you'll get used to it?
Well, long enough that once I got to sockets that actually could be adjusted and therefore didn't have to go through that, I realized that that's just a partial sentence. What they're actually saying to you, but they don't want to say all of it out loud, is wear it for a while, you'll get used to the pain. You'll have the pain, but you'll get used to it. Well, I'm sorry. Now I know that I didn't need to buy that. I bought that a lot of times.
And that's exactly it. Again, back to that conference that I spoke at a few weeks ago, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And I remember back to the first time I put a prosthesis on, and my CPOs are sitting there looking at me and they go, so how's it feel? And I go, you tell me, how's it supposed to feel? Feels like I'm wearing a cast with fingers attached to it.
That I can't control.
Exactly. But then again, let's flip it. They have no clue what it feels like or what it's supposed to feel like. They're making assumptions, educated assumptions, but still assumptions a lot of times. So you need, I accepted that. And probably the first 5 prosthetics that I got were carbon fabricated. And then the 6th one was the 3D printed one. And you'll never get me to go back to a carbon fabricated again. And to get me to go to, well, within me, I have my point design, manual ratcheting, I have a myoelectric, and I have silicone restoration. I use them all, but they all are used for different purposes. My myoelectric is a 3D printed frame, and it's the best fitting myoelectric, best fitting frame of that design
Yeah.
I've ever had.
Yeah.
The 3D printing and scanning works so good. But as soon as I put it on, I looked at him and I go back to the drawing board, because this thing, again, feels like I'm wearing a cast with fingers attached to it.
I think about all the people that I've through my career as an insurance claims adjuster. I always had an arrangement with my boss that I could go to a rehab facility and take an extra long lunchtime and help somebody who just hit the wall. The PT would call me and say,
Yeah.
well, we got a patient that's given up. He's going home tomorrow. Could you come by at noontime? And I would wear running shorts under my suit pants, leave the claims office and go up there and walk in, and I'd be sitting there, and they'd wheel them in. I'd be sitting on the elevatable table in the physical therapy area.
Yeah.
And so I'm just sitting there in shine shoes and, slacks and all this jazz. And they'd come in and I'd say, so tell me what's going on. And well, it hurts too much. It's not worth it. I'll be able to figure it out. I'm just going to stay in a chair, and it just hurts too much. And I'd say, okay, well, I can understand that. I mean, heck, it's not an easy thing you're trying to accomplish here. I'd say, I'm not going to flash you. I'm not being rude, but I'm going to take my trousers off here, and we'll talk again in a second. And I stood up and I'd take my trousers off and walk around the room, up the ramp and then down the stairs on the little practice stuff that they all have there, come back around, and I'd sit down on that table again and say, now, I'm sorry I interrupted. What were you saying? And I don't care if it was a 275-pound bearded burly guy or a 17-year-old little girl who just lost her leg. Tears were running because all these able-bodied people had told him, look, this will be okay. You'll be all right. It'll be okay. And why would they believe that? They watched me walk in doing it, and suddenly it's like, maybe I can do this. And when you can work with a physical therapist and a prosthetist who was willing to be a part of a team with the physical therapist and the patient, you can accomplish some interesting things. The thing that just tears me up about this whole industry is that the surgeon, number one, he's out the door the second the staples or stitches are out, because amputation means he failed. So he doesn't like any part of
Yeah.
this. He's gone. So now you got a prosthetist who is stuck with what the surgeon did. The surgeon did because he's never found out about what are
Yeah.
the results of his actions after the fact. And that may have to do with the fact that the person will never in their whole life have a fit that is worth having.
Yeah.
Yada, yada. They don't know that, and they don't care. They've moved on. And so then if we could somehow or another get physical therapists and prosthetists and support groups in a given area to work as a team to help the members of those support groups, the outcomes for everybody across the board would be better.
Oh, 100%, of which that's part. I devote a whole chapter within my book
Yeah.
on it, the multidisciplinary teams. That
Yep.
conference that I spoke at, that was the main focus of that conference, is multidisciplinary teams, of which, within the group that I spoke with, one of the hand surgeons, he literally has a prosthetist CPO in his phone, and he will FaceTime him
Yeah.
from the operating room
Yeah.
and say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. Where would you like me to, barring a better word, make the cuts?
Yeah. Exactly.
Because, well, I'm the perfect example. my surgeon told me, he goes, I'm going to try and save as much as possible. I go and meet with my first prosthetist, and they go, well, I think the best thing to do is take the rest of your middle finger away. Then we can give you 2 digits and take half of your ring finger so you still have a little bit. And that worked okay. Then 5 years later, I went to my surgeon. I said, I want the rest of the ring finger gone. And that was the best thing that ever happened, which it gave me 3 digits to work with. And, you know, but back to these mental multidisciplinary teams, now the big thing is including mental health providers, pain management providers, and I will say I stopped too soon because one of the surgeons that I love the most from the arms clinic back in New Jersey, he led a discussion and he goes, we now are including a social worker on our multidisciplinary team because the patient comes to us and they might have to change careers. And he goes, I have no clue what to tell them about careers and navigating all this extra stuff. So now they're including social workers that can help the amputees transition into something else if need be.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, that's an aspect of it that has been ignored for so long. It's just downright painful. I think about myself. I hid being an amputee. I was embarrassed about being an amputee somehow or another. Nobody else put it on me. I came from a very supportive family, but I just thought somebody was not going to accept me because I was an amputee. So I hid it. I hid it rather well. Mind you, my life changed and I started walking on prosthetic devices in 1961 as a above knee bilateral. I'm wearing cowboy boots. I had the feet set at an angle so I could wear regular heeled cowboy boots. And I'm wearing my jeans and I'm just doing everything I can so nobody will know I'm an amputee. And I did that well enough that I never thought about it. It was 2013 before I bought my first pair of shorts ever. I visited an amputee support group meeting and everybody in there was wearing shorts. And I thought, by golly, if they can do it, I can do it. Well, fast forward a few years, I go to my 50th high school reunion. I'm walking down the hall in my shorts and t-shirt, and about a dozen people altogether from this class of 300 graduating students. Not many of us were still there at the 50th, but the ones that were there came up and said, "Oh my God, Red, what happened? When did this happen?" And it's like, well, it was long before I even met you in school. We went to different elementary schools and junior high, so therefore you didn't even know me then. And I think about the mental strain, the emotional strain for me in living that false life. Yes,
Eh, eh,
it was an accomplishment. I could pat myself on the back for it, but there was part of me all along that said somebody's going to figure this out one of these days. Yeah, the emotional side of it is a much bigger part and ignored still in most circles, the emotional side of it for the family members and the people that love this individual whose life just changed.
100%
Yeah,
agreed.
yeah,
You know, the mental challenge is so much more, and we need to discuss it, talk about it, especially on the man's side of things.
yeah,
We're taught to suck up buttercup, hold it in, hold your head down, and just power through.
yep,
And, you know, we need to talk about it because I know I've lost, and I'm sure you have lost friends to their own hands, let's call it, because of mental challenge of the amputations.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I've had, it seems silly and I laugh about it, but I have had actually people who didn't want to shake my hand, like as though they might catch it.
Well, okay. I, 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 that is like an 80% for me
Yes, it's the
because,
hand. It's the right hand.
exactly.
Yeah.
And if people don't know my story, oh, the deer in the headlights, they're, oh, what do I do here?
Yeah.
Backwards, upside down. And it's
Yeah.
like, hey, just stick it out.
Yeah.
I'll grab it.
Yeah.
And um, it we need to talk about our struggles.
Yeah.
And that is going to be a lot of the discussion within my podcast going forward is mental health challenges, learning to talk, focusing on that
Well,
stuff.
I'll give you a springboard for an upcoming session then, because I'm going to tell you, I have, I've always been a happy guy. Everybody knows I'm a
Yeah.
happy guy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I just get there. I just make it happen, so forth and so on. 3 years ago, I went to a national event and there wasn't a specific need. I hadn't been invited to speak at any of the bilateral or AK groups. And I ended up talking with somebody else on the side when we broke out to go to smaller groups. And so I thought, I don't have a place I need to be, but I don't want to just wander off and wait for this session to be over. So I went to the PTSD session. Mind you, I was a young person. It was not one traumatic accident that I was in, and usually we get to defining PTSD that way. I sat there and watched these people talking back and forth, and I got gobsmacked. I had never known, personally, I had never known, as much as I know about PTSD, I had never known that I had suffered from it.
Yes.
Relationships in my life that have fallen apart very ugly might not have if that had been addressed. We
And
need
that's very
we need to go
true.
there.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And within our own families, relationships,
Mhm.
uh, um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Kind of like what you mentioned. You came home, you played with the kids and such. You thought you were in a good mood or a good place,
Yeah.
but were you? I'm part of a men's group right now that is called Counterfeit Emotions.
Oh boy. Oh wow.
And I recommend it
Yeah.
because it is so crazy. It's peeling back the onion
Yeah.
a peel at a time.
Yep.
And it has opened up the relationships that I am having now so much more. We have deep, deep discussions
Yeah.
about what we're feeling.
Yeah.
And, you know, we cry together over
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. It's okay.
Yes, it is. It honestly is.
Yeah.
Um, but we'll pause at this point for this discussion,
Yeah.
but we got more discussions ahead to
Absolutely.
talk about. And
Absolutely. And and there's been a lot of challenges and I've just half the time I've taken them as an excuse to try a little harder, prove somebody wrong that said I wouldn't be able to do that, stuff like that. And that's okay. It worked out to be good motivation for me. I didn't do anything that hurt myself badly by by accepting those challenges. But the bottom line is that um, I guess in a way it's an application of grace, and that is to say, if you give somebody else a break because they're having a hard time, but in our society, we're taught not to give ourselves a break because that's a sign of weakness, and
Yeah,
that kills a lot of relationships. It just does.
it 100%. It's
Yeah.
killed relationships in my past.
Yep.
Um, and being able to go deep and share our emotions is such a fulfilling
Oh yeah. Talk about liberation.
feeling.
Yep.
So, thanks again for your time today.
Appreciate it. The
And
opportunity. I'm all about this. You're doing good stuff, Jeff, and I appreciate that. I'm glad to be any part of it.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. We need to get this out more. So, we'll let you go today, and we look forward to talking again soon.
Look forward to it. Thanks.